Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden McCrone. Tonight, just reacting to Michigan State's loss to Michigan on Saturday, and just what we saw from that game, and also obviously 5 burning questions about the future of the program, as well as we're going to get into some basketball tonight as well. Aiden, so we're kind of at a crossroads here, it feels like, because obviously we have a show for the audience, and the lead up to the game this last weekend was, traffic was down on the site and things like that. I feel like the fan base is ready to move into basketball season. And so we're kind of presenting this as your opportunity, audience, to talk to us about what you want to see from us going forward, because obviously we don't want to keep talking about topics that aren't interesting to you guys. We do have kind of a structure that how we do things as far as our Wednesday shows, previewing, the upcoming week of college football, but we're open to making some adjustments and things like that. If we don't want to talk about football anymore, which I would totally understand. So let us know in the comments your thoughts. We'll look through those probably after the show and maybe adjust going forward how we operate and do things here. But with that, we'll get into tonight's show, which unfortunately has to start with the what we saw on Saturday from Michigan State and Michigan. Aiden, we did our staff predictions. We both, you had, Michigan State covering the spread. I was right around, the spread line there. Obviously didn't see what we kind of anticipated we seen. Thought there'd be more of a fight for Michigan State. Thought they would kind of show that typical, rivalry. I don't know what to call it, motivation, things like that. And it just wasn't there. What did you see? Walk me through your thoughts and emotions as the game was playing out. And let us know.
Yeah, watching the game, I think start the lead up and kind of the first couple drives, you could tell the crowd was loud. I think we could hear it in the box that it was louder than normal.
Yeah.
Michigan State's first night game against Michigan at home. So that, kind of that build up was, similar to Washington where you're like, okay, the crowd is going to be into it. Maybe that motivates the team a little bit more. It, gets them pumped up and ready to go. And then after the first quarter, it just kind of felt like all the air was taken out of the stadium. And then all the cheering and the bands playing were from Michigan fans and the Michigan band. So it definitely is kind of, it seems like a reoccurring, thing going on right now with MSU, where it's kind of there's build up that this team is good enough to, or kind of brought it together during the week or previous week. They're gonna bounce back, and then it fell flat. So
yes, it did. And I thought, this is kind of obvious when you lose a game 49-0, but there was the failures that we've seen in all 3 phases of football throughout the last couple of years were all on display in this game. You've got a 4th and 2 on Michigan State's first possession, and they can't get any push up front. Jay Johnson's calling a run up the middle. You've got an illegal formation on a punt, Michigan State's first punt of the game, right after last week, where an illegal formation causes you to repunt. You miss the snap, it goes into the end zone, and then the defense. Once again, I will say, I thought Michigan State did a good job against Michigan's run game, but the middle of the field in the intermediate passing game, still no progress there. The linebackers got picked apart by Michigan's tight ends throughout the game. I think Michigan, J.J. McCarthy threw 3 touchdown passes to tight ends. A.J. Barner and Colston Loveland were open, it seemed like, all night long. So again, all 3 phases of the game, a complete failure once again, and just a further indictment on what has been the Mel Tucker era. And I do think, even though, Tucker was fired after 2 games, I think this, he has to own this. This is on his resume. This is the staff he put together. And unfortunately, they're responsible for not only the worst loss at home against Michigan, but the worst loss by point margin in the 100-year history of Spartan Stadium. It's supposed to be a season where Spartan Stadium was celebrated, and they got this dropped on them. So just a failure at all levels, and really unfortunate. I did think there was a good point here brought up. I think it was by Kyle Cruz, about Harlan Barnett after the game, talking about that he's given the circumstances, they didn't want to push and take this with like a sympathetic thought, but like didn't want to push the players to the breaking point just because there's so much had gone on. And after this game, he said, that's got to come to an end now. We've got to coach these guys hard. We've got to get things figured out and flipped around. I don't know if it can be flipped around. And after this game, there's going to be more turnover. We've already saw that today with Harlan Barnett's press conference. Simeon Barrow, defensive tackle, redshirt junior, 3-year starter. He's more than likely going to end up in the transfer portal. That was straight from the mouth of Harlan Barnett today. Jalen Berger, who has kind of battled through injury throughout the year. He gets banged up early against Michigan. He's likely done for the season, Harlan Barnett said. So I guess, I don't know how much more we got to talk about the game other than what we'll do in our burning questions, Aiden. But like when you see the news about, Simeon Barrow potentially entering the transfer portal, Jalen Berger likely done for the year. What's your reaction? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think when we talked about our burning questions the previous weeks, I've always kind of asked like over under how many guys are leaving this week, or kind of where the transfer portal is gonna, what's it gonna be like now that Tucker's gone and that it opens for the month. And I think a lot of players are just gonna shut it down if they're having an injury or they're knocked up a little bit. I think they're just going to shut it down for the rest of the season. That seems to be a theme that will be reoccurring more and more once as the remaining 5 games come up. So I'm not really surprised. I think I don't know the exact number. I think we're around 7 players who've entered the portal
I think
far.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I haven't updated the tracker yet, but it's around 5 to 7, somewhere in there. If you're going back to like the fall camp and stuff too, if you go back that far, yeah.
Right. So I think we'll see that number increase kind of as the remainder of the season goes on.
Right. I do think that the 30-day window that opened when Tucker was fired, that's set to close sometime this week. I think the 26th would be the 30 days, depending on how I don't know if it's the day that Tucker was fired that it opened or if it was the next day. I'm not sure, but I think sometime this week that the portal window will close until the conclusion of the season. So if any more enter the portal, we should find out about that before the next game against Minnesota. Rob says, talk about the game is a waste for many reasons. In fact, including the fact that it very well may be vacated. Talk about that in the head coach search. I will use this as kind of an opening to talk about what's going on with the whole Michigan sign stealing allegations. I'm glad that we, full disclosure, the reason why we didn't do a Sunday night show is, I got back really late after the game on Saturday. Didn't sleep all that well that night, and so I kind of used yesterday to just catch up on my rest, and we figured we'd go live tonight. I'm glad I did that because obviously some more news came out today about the Michigan sign stealing allegations, a lot more details as far as the evidence that Big Ten schools have and that they've presented to the NCAA. And so I'm glad that we are doing this tonight as opposed to last night, because my initial reaction to the whole sign stealing thing was, I took it seriously. This is a big deal, but I wanted to know more of the details before I really reacted to it, just because I do think there's something to be said about being responsible, and that's not what happens in the public sphere of Twitter and social media and things like that. But I wanted to know, okay, what is actually being presented as evidence here, and now we have it. It sounds like Connor Stallions, this analyst, was purchasing tickets to games contacting people who doesn't sound like they were affiliated with the university, but like maybe there's an affiliation through him. I don't know how that's going to work as far as the whole legal thing, but sending people to games, they were taking recordings of opponents' signs and probably, obviously transmitting them back to him. Sounds like so. As far as consequences, like I've seen a lot of that. What are the consequences going to be? I'm not sure. I think it could be anything from banning Michigan from postseason play this year to, like I said, vacating wins, as it's been alluded to in the comments. So I'm not really sure because of the way the rules are written. There's not any specific penalties that are listed. There's also a bit of, I don't want to call it a loophole because I'm not going to try to sound like, trying to get out of something, but like there's a little bit of loophole that might be where if these people weren't affiliated with Michigan, does that, let them off the hook in some small way or at least lessen the penalties? I did see on Twitter that Baylor got popped for this a few years ago where they had an assistant coach at a game and it was like a 1-game suspension or something like that. But that's just one occurrence. That's one thing. But if it's like going back to the past 3 years, I think 10 or 11 of the Big Ten schools reporting that, this guy had bought tickets to their games. That's a lot more than just, one game where an assistant coach shows up at an opponent's venue or whatnot. So I think it's a little bit early to talk about consequences because there might be more that comes out as well. But yeah, Aiden. So I guess your reaction to this, like, it's kind of a mind-blowing story when it first comes out. It's like, why do you feel the need to do this when so much film is out there and things like that? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the reading more about it, the NCAA has rules about buying like in-person scouting. So the sign stealing is more of an unwritten rule and, something that's kind of like a gentleman's agreement, like kind of where you just don't steal other people's signs. And it's just like it's morally wrong. And that's kind of, they suspended him for that, but the in-person scouting is, written, set in stone, like law. Right. So that's kind of what he's getting busted for. And so, I mean, I wonder what their sanctions will be because, with or without the scouting, I think Michigan is, if they continue to go on the path that they're on, they're still going to probably make the playoff. And, the betting odds just went up for them to be, they're the number one odds on favorite to win the national title right now.
Right.
So just kind of with all that, I wonder what the sanctions will be. I'm not holding my breath. I don't expect it to be anything crazy where they're like they might get a bowl ban eventually or something like that, but I'm not looking for them to get like the death penalty or anything. I don't think that's going to happen. So, obviously I would expect, them to fire Connor Stallions for this. I know he's suspended without pay right now, or sorry, with pay.
Just to clarify.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'd expect. And yeah, I think that the thing is that's funny is Michigan and specifically Jim Harbaugh has been the one to kind of point fingers at people and say, hey, they're cheating. And
hard to beat the cheaters,
Yeah. And so I think that's another interesting angle on top of that because there's no way he didn't know about it. The guy's on staff and he's on the sideline every game and he's standing next to the defensive coordinator every game. So all of that together, kind of the evidence is being compiled. I think we'll see what kind of, I guess, rebuttal Michigan will have and kind of what the NCAA has laid out for them.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out as far as really, I mean, the job of the NCAA now, I'm not going to say job, but like what they're going to be looking into is what connections or what was the kind of the ladder as far as like if Connor Stalions is the guy who's sending people out to scout these games, to get video, who's he taking that information once he breaks it down and figures stuff out? Who is he presenting that to? Yeah, and it's it could go a lot of different directions. It does, like in the initial reports from Yahoo Sports and ESPN that talked about how both sides of the ball, offense and defense. So you would think that would at least in some way implicate Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator, and Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. So it'll just, again, interesting to see what else comes out of this. And yeah, as of now, we just wait to see what happens. If I was a Michigan fan, I would be very nervous about the rest of this season. And typically the NCAA does not move very quickly with things. So I mean, there's that. But with the team that they have, they've got their goal set on not only another Big Ten championship, but also getting to the playoff, actually winning a game in the college football playoff and competing for a national championship. If that's taken away, this is going to go down as one of the biggest blunders by a coaching tree or whatever you want to call it in the history of college football. So definitely going to be interesting to see what comes of this. And I guess for that, we'll just leave it at that, and we'll get back to the subject at hand, which is Michigan State. I've seen a few people in the comments talking about this wasn't a game, so why talk about it? Do you have anything to say, I guess, about the game itself, Aiden, other than what's in your burning questions, or can we just move on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think all I have to say is they weren't stealing signs because Caden Hauser was going over to the sideline every play, but it did feel like they might have hit a chip in the headset, so they were listening. They weren't stealing signs; they were just listening to Jay Johnson call some bad plays on fourth down. So yeah,
right. They need some spy equipment to find out that it was going to be a halfback dive on 4th and 2. Is that what?
Yeah.
So, all right. I guess with that, we'll get into burning questions. As I said, guys, go ahead in the comment sections. Tell us what you want to start hearing about as far as our podcast going forward. Just to kind of present it to you on Wednesdays, we typically will talk about the upcoming football game. We do Big Ten at a glance, where we look at all the football games in the Big Ten. We do our over-unders on the football game, and then take a look at the national stage and the biggest games of the week, and then we give our predictions for Michigan State's football game. Should we restructure that? Should we abandon that model and just completely focus in on basketball? What do you want to see on Wednesdays? Let us know in the comments, and we'll try to adjust our show programming based on that, because we don't want to come on here and bore you guys. So that's not doing us any good and not doing you any good. So let us know. As far as potential new coaches, I mean, I think we're still fairly early in this process. So I don't have any specific updates on any guys or any candidates. And I saw a question earlier about, will we change anything as far as our the names that we threw out? It's probably been about a month ago that we started, producing those stories about, there's some potential candidates. I said a while back that, Jonathan Smith would be my number one guy. I think you said a similar thing, Aiden. Mike Elko is certainly up there. Chris Kleiman has come out, and I mean, this was a while ago too, but came out and said that he wasn't interested, but of course he's going to say that. This was back in September. I think something similar came out of Washington State, Jake Dickert, saying that he hadn't talked to anybody from Michigan State. Of course, it's going to be through his agent, so he's not going to say that anyway. But there's been a little bit of that kind of stuff. But as far as specific candidates being interviewed or anything like that, I don't know that that's even started. That process has even started right now. On top of that, you've got this whole board of trustees thing that's going on at Michigan State right now, where you've got infighting amongst the board of trustees. And it seems like before the board of trustees have to sit down and vote on any hire that Alan Haller makes and get it approved. So you would think that this infighting between the board of trustees has to be worked out before this is presented. So that's kind of a mess right now. I think there's a few there's a few ducks that need to be put in the row before you go forward with this. So obviously there's a lot of as eggplant talks about, there's a lot of talk about Urban Meyer on Twitter, with Justin Spiro kind of leading the charge with his raise the flag campaign on Twitter about Urban Meyer. I will say that David Harns is somebody that I really appreciate. He works for a different, kind of a competitor. Spartans Illustrated is the Rivals.com affiliate who covers Michigan State. He's the publisher of that, and so I probably shouldn't plug them on our show, seeing as how they're a competitor. But I think he does really good work, and he's been pretty adamant for the past several weeks that he does not believe Urban Meyer will be interviewed for the job. He's talked to people close to Alan Haller. I think there's a reputation thing there with Alan Haller. He doesn't want his reputation tied to Urban Meyer for obvious reasons. And so I would really, I would temper expectations for Urban Meyer. Like, I know Justin Spiro, I don't know if he's like getting his jollies off of just getting people excited or pissing people off. Like, I don't know what that's all about, his whole campaign, but I trust David Harns as a source. I would encourage you to go on his Twitter page and kind of look at some of the things he's had to say about Urban Meyer. If you want some more information, like that's where I would turn. I'm not going to just steal his ideas or his thoughts and put them on here, but I would encourage you guys go check out David Harns on Twitter, and he's had a lot of thoughts on that. I think you need to go with a more realistic option. I don't know. Has your thoughts on this whole coaching search changed at all, Aiden, as far as candidates, as far as the prototype coach that you might want to target, or Michigan State might want to target? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I know we talked about it a little at the game, and I think, when you look at kind of the coaches that are available right now, obviously, Jonathan Smith, Mike Elko kind of stick out amongst others. There's also Jake Dickert, Chris Kleiman, some guys. I know Charles Huff at Marshall, but when you look at it, it feels pretty slim. There's a lot of kind of offensive coordinators that have potential, but looking at MSU, while they are kind of in the dumps right now, it still is a top 25 job in terms of resources and kind of the recruits that are, available to you just based off of location, geography. So I think, it still is a really good job, but, the potential kind of group of 5 coaches that are, not really there to take the next step yet. And then there's a lot of defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators that, same deal. Are they really ready for a top 25 job? And you look at kind of years past where you have these powerhouse programs like Alabama, who produced, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin, even Mel Tucker, amongst others, and Georgia and have recently produced Dan Lanning, and you have those coordinators, those young guys who take these big jobs, and none of those schools really have that right now. I mean, Georgia has 2 retread coordinators with Will Muschamp and Mike Bobo. Alabama's got Tommy Rees, who is young but not really seen as like a CEO quite yet. And then, so there's not a lot of guys right now in terms of that really stick out. So I think it's going to be hard. I think Alan Haller has, a lot of work to do in terms of finding that guy, because it is going to feel like, if it's not Urban Meyer, who has who's arguably the most qualified person for this job right now, that is, he's readily available to take the job tomorrow.
Sure.
So, but besides him, it's gonna feel like you're taking a swing on a guy, because Jonathan Smith has never coached anywhere besides the West Coast. Jake Dickert really only has 2 years of experience.
Right.
Charles Huff, again, like kind of young up and coming or younger and up and coming coach. Yeah, he has the pedigree from Penn State and Alabama as a position coach, but can he, you know, turn Michigan State into, you know, a consistent like 9 to 10 win program every year coming from, you know, Marshall, which this is his only, I think it's only his second or third year as a head coach. So there's just going to be a lot of looming questions. And again, like if it's not Urban Meyer, and I'd even throw Dan Mullen in the hat for that too. Okay. Besides those two guys, I really think that whoever they hire, it's going to feel like you're taking a swing on somebody.
Yeah, no, even in the press box on Saturday, I kind of threw out Chris Peterson maybe as a guy who's coached a lot. But the thing with Chris Peterson is I don't know if he wants to get back into coaching. I mean, the reason why he left Washington was just the overwhelming job that being a head coach in college football is nowadays. And he was just burnt out. Like he was a successful guy. I know he's got some family stuff as well. So would he really be willing to come back? And I mean, it's never, I mean, this is what Urban Meyer said at the Knoxville Quarterback Club, whatever that is, where the quotes came out this last time. But he said, you know, it's never been harder now with the transfer portal and NIL. He's talking about how, you know, high school kids now have agents, which is just insane and silly in my opinion, but it is what it is. So, you know, would Chris Peterson want to come back and have to deal with all those headaches, or is he just going to enjoy his, you know, TV studio job, you know? So things like that, but to your point, there's few proven commodities out there at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go. We do our best to kind of keep our ears to the ground as far as like what we're hearing, as far as maybe if candidates emerge and things like that. So we'll do our best to keep track on that. I just, with this board of trustees infighting that's going on now at Michigan State, like it just feels like this. I don't think anything's going to come soon because they've got to get a lot of things worked out. They're also trying to hire a new university president, so there's a few things that need to happen here. I don't know that the president needs to be hired before the head coach, probably not, but this whole board of trustees thing needs to get worked out. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and dive into our burning questions. Aiden, you said in the press box as we were leaving that you had a couple basketball questions. And so to kind of help with the flow of things, I've got one basketball question. So okay. I think if I go, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'll go first and then we'll just go back and forth and we'll work through these. So looking back towards the game, unfortunately, I did want to ask, this is the kind of the question. It ends in a ... So this was the Michigan State's worst loss in football since ... question mark. When was I know you probably grew up in the your memories is centered around the D'Antonio era. So a lot of good memories there. But what are your thoughts?
My short answer wants to say since last week against Rutgers.
Well, that's an acceptable answer.
But I mean, Michigan State lost to Michigan in 2019. I think it was 44-10.
Yeah.
That was a bad and not competitive loss at all. But that also wasn't at home either. That was on the road.
Sure.
And that kind of, for me, that felt like it was the nail in the coffin for the D'Antonio era. But I'd say probably that loss or the loss to Rutgers last week, and if not, the loss to Iowa. So
yeah, no, I think that's acceptable. I think that's acceptable. Kind of as a bigger picture thing, the one that's most aesthetically similar would be the 49-3 loss during the Bobby Williams era. I think Bobby Williams got fired immediately after that game. But the reason why I presented this as a burning question is just because it's been a long time since Michigan State as a program has been in this spot. It seems like there were some down years during D'Antonio. 2016 jumps out. Obviously, you went 3-9, kind of out of nowhere. So obviously that was a bad year. But as far as 5-7 last year, hard to even imagine them getting to 5-7 this year. Obviously, the 11-2 in 2021 now looks like a complete anomaly. Thank you, Kenneth Walker type thing, and then COVID year 2-5. So and then the previous 2 years of D'Antonio 7-6, 7-6, I think. So it's been a stretch now that Michigan State hasn't been in this spot for a long time. So this isn't part of my burning question or one of my burning questions, but like, where's your level of concern now that given the fact that we're looking kind of at a 5 to 6 year chunk here where it's been rough other than, the 2021 season?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think MSU is still a top 25 job in the country, all things considered. And especially with the Big Ten, kind of in the middle of, they're the head of the future and kind of leading the way into this conference expansion just makes them even more valuable. So I would expect Michigan State to be, competing with, the likes of Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan that they did in the past under D'Antonio. So the fact that you can't get even an 8-win season is definitely concerning. I'd say, I don't know where I would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, but I was, before the whole Mel Tucker news broke, I was already at probably a 6 or a 7,
Sure.
where the seat is somewhat getting hot. And then now that you have to reset, back even further, and now that, you're looking at another probably 2 to 3 year rebuild coming back again, I think, that level of concern is definitely high. And like I talked about with the coaching search, that those candidates, you really have to get it right on this this hire. It really has to get right, because with USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington all coming in, it's going to be a matter of sinking or swimming.
No, I completely agree with you. Go ahead and hit me with your first burning question.
All right. So my first burning question is, what so a couple weeks ago, you asked, one of your questions was, describe the season so far in one word.
Yeah.
And I said avalanche, and you said catastrophe or something. I forgot.
Debacle. I think debacle.
Yeah. So I'm saying, would you change your word, or would you change it to something else?
No, I still kind of like debacle. If I can add a word to it.
Yeah.
Complete. I don't know. No, I like debacle. Go ahead and give me yours, and let me ponder this a little bit more. But yeah, actually, I've got one. Actually, I got one. Inadequate. Inadequate would be the word that I would use. Mostly describing what we've seen out of the coaching staff. They've done a completely inadequate job. It's unacceptable. Again, it's a 5-yard penalty, but the illegal formation on a punt, like, is there any easier thing than getting lined up correctly? Like, is that not the easiest thing to do in football? Is make sure you have 7 people on the line of scrimmage and 4 in the backfield, and no more in the backfield than 4. Like, it seems pretty easy. So inadequate would be the word I would use. Keys of Wisdom says add several F words with that. Steven says implosion. I think that's a good word. Go ahead, Amy, with yours, Aiden.
Yeah, I mean, I said avalanche, which it definitely has resembled it. But I mean, honestly, I would say just rubble. It feels rubble, like it feels like after the avalanche, there's rubble, and the kind of the remains of this season is not what anyone wants. And I do want to credit Nathan Carter and Aaron Brule for going up and talking to the press after just a brutal loss. Like, sure. I do want to credit them, because not a lot of people would. And the fact that they went up there and they answered questions about that, and you could tell they were really disappointed, but they weren't taking shots at people, and they the way they handle themselves, I think that's admirable. But I think there's not a lot left with this program in terms of just it looks like a lost cause right now.
Yeah, if the Mel Tucker news was the final explosion of like a nuclear meltdown type thing, if you think about like Chernobyl or something like that, if that was that, I think Rebel is a good, because we're now like, this is what's left. Like this is what's left of the program after that. So I think Rebel is a very good word. So I've kind of got a similar one for my next burning question. It's how would you define the Mel Tucker era of Michigan State football? Because there is a little bit of a, because with that 11-2 season, it's not is it a complete disaster, or does that prevent it from being a complete disaster? How would you define, I guess, these last 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, 2020, obviously, their first game of the season, they lose to Rutgers, and you're like, honestly, this might go back to your first question. That did feel like an all-time low loss, and then was redeemed with a win over Michigan, and then they lost badly to Iowa, and they lost to Indiana and Ohio State, and then they go out and beat Northwestern, who was top 10 in the country and undefeated. Yeah. So that was just, that season felt like it was just turnover, and it seemed like there was good coaching there, and it was just kind of figuring who to keep and kind of where to put them in position. And then 2021, obviously, it was definitely an outlier, and they hit the transfer portal hard. They hit some home run players, and they did miss on a few guys, but still it was definitely successful. And then 2022, it kind of felt like they underachieved, but they were still somewhat on schedule in terms of just the growth of the program. And then this year leading up to it, there was they added a lot more depth, but it just seems like it seemed like the coaching fell off. And even before what happened with Tucker, just because they come out, they have a lot of guys who were starters, and I don't want to pick on Noah Kim, but obviously that's the big one, because then Caden Hauser comes in and against Rutgers and does well. So and then the whole special teams thing. So yeah, I think that it just felt like I don't know how I would describe it in one word, but yeah, I do think a lot of it falls on the coaching staff, and kind of their judgment was not the greatest on a lot of situations.
Yeah, no, I didn't boil it down to one word, but I did kind of a phrase, and the phrase that I came up with was all flash, little substance. That's kind of how I will define this era going forward. Obviously, the 2011 season was a big flash. It was this big, Kenneth Walker was one thing, but on top of that, like you had Jaden Reed on the outside, and who was the other receiver opposite him?
Jalen Naylor.
Jalen Naylor is, he's a draft pick. And so like those two guys complemented each other very well. And you had Trey Mosley, in the slot. And even like with those two weapons and the guy in the backfield, even Peyton Thorne looked like a very, I would argue, second team, third team, all Big Ten quality quarterback type of thing.
And someone just said Connor Hayward in the comments, which I remember it drove me up a wall every time MSU would play, and they'd give him the ball to run it. And then, they make him, an H-back or a tight end. And then he's all of a sudden like he was working wonders. And I think he got drafted because of it. So,
yeah. So all flash, little substance. Like again, 2021, this big flash, but then it was like a firework, and then it was just gone. There was nothing to it. Like it was just ash that was left over. Recruiting, even like, there was a lot of flash in recruiting, and they did recruit well as far as like some 4-star guys. But as we saw with last year's class, the substance is also like you fill in the gaps with like some 3-star talent, and that's kind of like the glue that holds classes together. So all flash, little substance is the way that I would describe it. Kyle says mirage, which I think that's appropriate as well. So that's kind of where I fell with that. All right, Aiden, hit me through another one. Our next
All
one.
right. My second one is, Barnett talked about, he was kind of being more compassionate than usual
Yeah.
about kind of the team and everything. What does that translate to in terms of the coaching staff? Kind of how does that being less, I guess, less compassionate and kind of going back to his normal self, how do you think that affects the coaching staff? And could we potentially see any changes if he has the authority?
Yeah, it's hard because without I'm not in the locker room. I'm not any of these players like therapists or anything like that. So it's hard to know like who some people some people stuff just kind of rolls off their backs and they just want to play football and it is what other people like you form bonds and suffer with different emotional things. Like people react to things differently, and so I think it is challenging on a much smaller scale. I deal with this a little bit when I'm coaching, my basketball guys. It's like I'm a competitive guy. I like to win. I see the potential in certain players, and I want to bring every ounce of that potential out. And sometimes I want to do that by like challenging them and getting and challenging them like, hey, I know you can do this, but like at the same time, you don't want to discourage a kid. You don't want to make the sport unenjoyable. I think a lot of us have had that experience with a coach that we didn't like, who we didn't even enjoy the game anymore after playing for this person. I don't want to be that guy. Now that's high school kids. Like that's very different from college. It's a different expectation. There's a different level of whatever. So as far as what that looks like, I don't know. I think I don't mind the message sent as far as, okay, hey, the funeral's over, the wake is over. Like it's time to get back to everyday life and get back to your regular training and preparation, all that. Like I think that's appropriate at this point. I think it's been long enough now that it's like, hey, if you don't want to be here, there's the door. And if you do want to be here, let's get better. And so I'm okay with the messaging. I don't know how much it really translates to success for the rest of the season though. Because it just feels like things are off the rails at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, if you're a player or a coach, I mean, even players, coaches, fans, like everyone wants to win. No one wants to be a part of a losing team. No one wants to watch or play or coach a losing team. So it's not fun. And he gets thrown into a situation. And I remember at the press conference Saturday, someone kind of alluded to, before they asked the question, was like, you have the toughest job in sports right now. It almost feels like. And
yeah.
So I think in terms of like everyone wants to win. Like it's not, everyone wants to. So I think it's not that, but it is kind of, I think it does start with the coaching and holding the other coaches accountable for kind of what's going on, because the back-to-back weeks of the punt team can't get set properly, and the offense having struggling on short yardage plays. And I think that, yeah, the level of accountability, I think there's a same standard for a player as there is for a coach. And I think that if that's something that Harlan Barnett is saying, I have to get back to my old self of where I was at my best as a coach. If he's saying that, I think that starts with holding those other coaches, really accountable for what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's well said. There's a couple questions in the comment section I want to just kind of briefly touch on. Steven asked, why would kids hit the portal now with 5 games that they played 5 games? What's the point? I mean, that's a good question for if in the case like Barrow, he's not going to salvage a year of eligibility. And so that's a good point. It could be like, I know he went down for a while against Michigan. I don't know if he came back or not. I think he did, but it might just be if you've got another year and you just want to salvage your body at this point and move forward, or again, he's not in the portal yet, so maybe there's like I said, some mental stuff that's going on. This is pure speculation. I want to make that clear before I continue my thought, but like maybe like stuff is just weighing on a player, and that's like in general. I don't want to speak specifically about Simeon Barrow, but like if stuff's just weighing on guys and like, hey, I need to step away from the game here for a while. It could be something like that. Yeah, there's a few different reasons. You do make a good point about how if you've played 5 games, you can't redshirt, you can't save the year of eligibility. So any further thoughts on that, Aiden, as far as?
No, I mean, yeah, you kind of hit it on the head. I think it's just kind of, if there's a guy that's going to have an injury or kind of potentially, questionable, I think they're just going to, sit it out, be fully healed and ready for next season.
Right. And Eggplant asked about, crazy bounce back next year. Ask me again when we know who the coach will be. That's kind of that's what that boils down to. And then we'll see what happens in the transfer portal and things like that, as far as team guys leaving, as far as who gets brought in. So that's really, I mean, it's too early to say at this point, just because we don't know who's going to be here. So, all right. Moving on to my next burning question, kind of a bit of a theme here, but it does pertain back to that 2021 season, Aiden. Michigan State does not retire numbers, but they do have a ring of honor around Spartan Stadium with, guys who have, their names and numbers up there. So I ask you, Aiden, should Kenneth Walker's number 9 be added to Michigan State's ring of honor?
Jeez. I don't know. I think for the 1 year that he did, and it seems like he got them 10 or 11 or 10 of their 11 wins that year were because of him. It does feel like it. It feels like it should, but I think the fact that he was only there for 1 year,
yes,
I don't know if they would do that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm at too. Obviously, I think he was the first ever. Was he the first ever Doak Walker Award winner for Michigan State? I don't think so. I don't know that that award was around when like Lorenzo White was here or not. I'm not sure, but I think he might have been. I think he was the only Maxwell Award winner. So the year was outstanding. I do think like the longevity piece of it though might hold him back from having his name up there. Plus, this isn't Kenneth Walker's fault in any way, shape, or form, but do Spartan fans want a reminder of this era on the Ring of Honor, just because of the way that Michael Tucker's tenure ended and things like that? So I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I do think the fact that he was only here for a year probably holds him back from that. But all right, go ahead and hit me.
I don't blame him. So my last football question, I'll say that. What 3 players, if you had to pick on this team, would you try your best to keep here moving forward?
So what in expansion drafts for like the pro leagues, you can put protections on certain players.
Exactly.
So that's what you're kind of asking. Okay. That's interesting because I think Nathan Carter would be one of them because he's got some eligibility remaining. And I'm not too worried about him per se, just because he has already used the one-time transfer. And so if he transfers again, he'll probably have to sit out a year. So, but just for the sake of whatever, I'll say Nathan Carter would be one. I don't know that I want to use the last 2 both on a quarterback. But but which one do you choose type of thing? Caden Hauser or Sam Leavitt. No offense to Noah Kim, but like those guys have more eligibility remaining. There's higher upside and things like that. Right. Just because again the longevity, I think I would go with Sam Leavitt just because he's probably going to redshirt. That was talked about in the press conference today. a little bit. He's played in 2 games. You can play in up to 4 and still maintain a red shirt. So you can still potentially have him around for 4 years, whereas opposed to Hauser, it's only 3. And so that's basically what I'm basing that on, just because we haven't seen a whole lot of Sam Leavitt this year. He came in towards the end of the game, had a nice, really good pocket presence on one play where he, stepped up in the pocket, escaped, got hit late out of bounds for an additional 15 yards. Good. There's some good arm talent there, obviously. So I think I would probably lean him. I don't mean that as a knock on Caden Hauser. It's just like the whole eligibility thing. And then Jordan Hall. Yeah. Jordan Hall for sure would be the third one. He's a guy I think you can build the defensive round going forward. So I guess those would be my 3: Nate Carter, Sam Leavitt, and Jordan Hall.
Yeah, I had Jordan Hall as my number 1 player. I think, he's got to be the guy in terms of the defense to kind of figure out who to build around. I kind of went out I wouldn't say I went on a limb here, but I said Malik Spencer is one of the other players.
Yep,
I
can see it.
said two players on defense. I think he's done well when he's been healthy and, could be developed into a really good safety. And then the third one, I didn't really think about Carter, honestly. I definitely went quarterback. I said Caden Hauser for my third one, I think. Yeah, I mean, I understand if you pick Sam Leavitt. I think either one, you can go either way with that. And then I know someone in the comments asked about the Belleville quarterback.
Yeah.
Bryce Underwood, who's obviously the number 1 player in the country for, I think, class 2026, or he's a junior right now. So
yeah, 2025, I think.
Yeah, so 20. Yeah, he's the number 1 player for 2025. But there is slim to none. I would say the schools that he's really considering right now, I would say LSU is probably the top of his list amongst others, but MSU would have to really put together a crazy good coaching staff that could, that either has ties to him currently at kind of the schools he's looking at, which are, Michigan, LSU, Colorado, some other SEC schools. So they got to poach somebody from one of those schools amongst others. And he's really got to like the head coach if you even want a shot in the dark at him. So that's also kind of why I would pick Hauser to stay or Sam, or if you pick Sam Leavitt to stay, because there's a lot of good talent in state, but I think he's leaving.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't want to fuel the rumors, but the only way I could see Bryce Underwood ending up at Michigan State would be if they went out and hired like Urban Meyer, and that just changes the entire, or Dion or something like that. Which, but I don't think that's very likely. So, I'm with you on that. So, who just asked a question? Was it you or was it I?
I did.
You did. Okay, so I'm on my second to last one here. This question brings me no joy, Aiden, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. So every year it seems like there are one or two 5-7 teams that get invited to a bowl game, regardless of not reaching like the whole 6-win plateau. Is there any part of you that would like Michigan State to get invited to a bowl game if they happen to go 5-7, or are you just ready for this to be done?
I mean, sure, I would like MSU to get to a bowl game. I wonder if that would affect the coaching search at all, or kind of, we saw last year Luke Fickell was on the sideline and was kind of coaching Wisconsin.
I think he coached him. Game.
Yeah. It was kind of odd, but I think it's important for the players, just the fact to get that experience, get those. I think it's like between 15 to 20 extra practices. Like that's huge in terms of growth of a program. So I think that's a big thing. But the road to 5 is probably just as hard as the road to 6 wins. So
yeah, for sure. Because you got to
that's
beat either Ohio State or Penn State, and
right.
good luck with that.
Yeah.
Or do you?
No, you don't. You
Oh, you don't have to win
6
one.
wins.
To
6
6
wins, you
wins,
have to beat
yes,
one of them, but 5
right.
wins you don't.
But
So
I think 2 of those are on the road, though.
Minnesota and Indiana.
And Indiana. I mean, Indiana, dude, man, Indiana's so bad. Indiana's so bad. As bad as Michigan State is, I still think they're going to win that game. Like, call me a sucker.
I hope so.
But and we'll see what I haven't decided one way or the other on the Minnesota game this weekend. But that's Wednesday's show or our predictions column for later. I'm not going to get into that tonight. But yeah, as far going back to my question though, how would I answer this as far as like if Michigan State does end up at 5-7? This for selfish reasons and selfish reasons only, I would take a bowl bid just because that's a little bit more content for me in December, which is kind of a slower month. There's a lot of recruiting stuff in December that we would cover and things like that. Basketball has started, but it's not really like getting going yet. And also in December because of Christmas break. There's not a lot of Big Ten games in like mid to late September, even like the last 2/3 of December. It's a lot of these games against small opponents, and so it's kind of a little bit of a deader month for content. So for that reason and that reason only, I would say yeah, let's go ahead and get a bowl bid at 5-7 and give me something to cover. But all right, Aiden, we are shifting gears. We're talking basketball from here on out. So hit me with your fourth burning question. Let's talk some hoops.
Yeah. So Jackson Kohler, obviously some news broke this week about his surgery that he's undergoing, and he's out until December or January. I can't remember.
I think they said hoping to have him back by Christmas.
Yeah. So end of December. So I guess kind of how big of a loss is that for early in the season? Obviously, we know, what MSU's kind of early season routine is. So, but how just kind of, I guess, what's that kind of, does that affect anything for you?
Yeah, no, I am bummed because as Eggplant says, I kind of do see this as a potential breakout year for Jackson Kohler. We've seen the pictures of him. He looks much slimmer, which is interesting because you would think being slimmer, something like a foot injury, you would help avoid that. But nonetheless, like I hope this isn't like a lingering thing like we've seen with Malik Hall throughout his career and things like that with some lower body injuries. I do also think as far as a complete center on both ends of the court, I feel like Jackson Kohler was probably your best guy in terms of potential for that. Now, he had to work on some things defensively because that's kind of what kept him off the floor at times last year. And I think his weight and his stamina had something to do with that too. But he's between him, Mady Sissoko, and Carson Cooper, he was definitely the most refined on the offensive end. So losing that is kind of a bummer. And so we'll see what's there when he comes back. I guess the nice thing here, and this is different from last year with like Malik Hall or even Jaden Akins, is because of the depth that Michigan State has this season, you don't have to rush him back in. You can, I would, not that I'm going to tell Izzo what to do, but like I would encourage them to, hey, let these guys hold down the fort, let him get back to 100% health before bringing him back, and then you can kind of ease him and work him back slowly because you do have the depth there. So that would be my response.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The lack of depth last year was definitely tough, and obviously that he and Carson Cooper were freshmen didn't help the matter at all. I think now this year, kind of like you mentioned, the fact that you have, arguably your best front court scorer is now out for, until Christmas, basically, that, that hurts a lot. But at the same time, you'd hope Cooper kind of gets better at finishing. You would hope Mady can contribute. And then, you really only need one of two between Booker and Carr to kind of, start strong. And then you can develop the other one or kind of, you can work your way around. But yeah, that depth was, almost, it feels like an Izzo staple is that, they do have, 9 or 10 guys that they play throughout the whole season. And I think, you do lose that a little bit, but you still have, 3 centers there that can play really, really at a high level.
Right. I'm just gonna throw this up from Trevor real quick. Appreciate this, Trevor. Letting us know. And I didn't take offense to the question at all about that. And in fact, it gave me an opportunity to kind of address it with the live stream. For those who don't know, I accidentally misread a tweet from Chris Solari about Noah Kim's travel status with Iowa. I thought he didn't make the trip. Updated a story and it didn't go over. Obviously, caused a lot of a quick reaction. And then once I realized that I had gotten it wrong, I took it down. I published a correction, things like that. So I never want, that's the last thing any of us want to do is put out bad information. And so the fact that I did was unfortunate, and I felt bad. Hopefully I got to it quick enough that it didn't get too far before the correction got out there. So, but no, I appreciate you reaching out, and welcome back to the audience. So, all right, moving on to my last burning question. This is pretty general. Probably could have come up with a more specific or exciting question, but my last one is: what are you most looking forward to from Michigan State men's basketball this season?
I would say winning. I think winning and beating good teams, because I think the last 2 years it really feels like they were in it with a lot of really good teams, but they could never really beat a Purdue. The game on the aircraft carrier, they were beating Gonzaga almost the whole game. They ended up losing by 2.
Sure.
The Duke game where I think 2 years ago where Duke had Paulo Banchero, and it felt like MSU had them on the ropes, and then they let them back in at the end. I think winning, that's the biggest thing. And how Izzo loves to have this schedule in November and December to be as loaded as possible. And hopefully they can get some of those, because I think that's the one thing that's really missing is just this team is, they haven't learned to win in those big time games.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great answer, because if there's anything that the Spartan faithful need right now, it's to see a winner after what we've seen a lot of this fall. So no, that's a great answer, and I think they'll be doing a lot of it this winter. So I will say, kind of to your point, and kind of expanding on that a little bit, these last 3 years, they haven't been bad years per se. They've still continued the NCAA tournament streak and things like that. So, and that's kind of the baseline level of success for Michigan State basketball, which speaks to the program, because they've got the longest streak in the country right now. I think they're approaching. I think Kansas's streak. No, I might be wrong about that. I think Kansas has the longer streak, but they're in the upper echelon as far as longest streaks of NCAA tournament appearances. But that is really the minimum level of success. I think anybody who's being honest would look at these last 3 years and say it's not quite up to the standard that or the expectation that Michigan State basketball has. And then you fast forward to this year, and it looks like this program is back in that upper echelon, ready to compete for a Big Ten championship and a run through March and a potential national championship. So, that's a good answer. Specifically, if I'm looking for one specific thing, I've said this before, so it's no secret, but I can't wait for that first time when there's a rebound and it gets outletted up court to AJ Hogard. He takes the middle, and we've got Jaden Higgins on one side, Cohen Carr on the other side, and we're on a 3-on-2 or something similar, and look out below type of situation. So I'm looking forward to that. I think Michigan State's play style, as far as pushing the ball, it does bode well for those guys on the outsides. And then by the way, here's Tyson Walker as a trailer. in case something's not open up front. You just toss it back there and let him pop a three type thing. So Michigan State in transition is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. So, all right, and you should have one more. Close us out here.
Yeah. So my last question is, from the open practices and kind of the March or the Midnight Madness, a lot of people have been talking about Jeremy Fears. He's been a kind of a popular player, just of how impressed people have been. So what is your expectation for him? Obviously that he's behind Hogard, Akins, Walker, kind of where do you see him fit in, and what do you expect out of him as a freshman?
Yeah, no, I don't know that I have necessarily expectations, just because you've got AJ and you've got Tyson, and Jaden doesn't play point much, but like he has been on ball a little bit, and then Holloman you've got coming back with some experience, and so as far as expectation, I expect Izzo will probably feed him some minutes here and there early on in the year, get his feet wet. We've heard about his leadership. We've heard about obviously being a 5-star kid. He's got unbelievable basketball skills and things like that. Being a point guard, you would imagine the basketball IQ is up there as well. So I wouldn't say I have super high expectations. I'm just kind of interested to see what he's going to look like. The dynamic between him and Trey Holloman is interesting to me, just because it is kind of a loaded backcourt, and where are you going to find the minutes for all of these guys? And you certainly don't want to keep a guy who has the talent of a Jeremy Fears, at least what we've heard about. You don't want to just like keep him packaged up on the bench. So I'm interested to see how Izzo uses that rotation. And they've got a couple scrimmages, one on Wednesday, I think another one on Sunday, and then the season gets going, 2 kind of cupcake games, and you got Duke. So they do have a little bit of time here to kind of play with the lineup and figure out how you want to use him going forward. But I'm just excited to see what he looks like.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned Trey Holloman, because I was going to mention him as well, because I really like his game, just in terms. I think Izzo really likes his game, because he's not the most prolific scorer or anything, but he's a really good defender, and I think all of these guards are. And I think that second group of guys that Fears, Holloman, the other freshmen, the way those guys are going to earn more minutes is not scoring but doing everything else, kind of the defense, being scrappy, the passing, all of that kind of. So I know that's something that Izzo harps on year in and year out. And so for that reason, I think Fears, he can work his way into the lineup. I think a little bit more. I kind of see, I don't take this out of context, but I do see a little bit of like Cassius kind of in him, in terms of some creativity. I think he's more athletic than Cassius is, but I'm not going to say he's going to be a national player of the year when he's a junior, but I do see a little bit of some parallels when they came in as freshmen, and kind of what they were out of high school as well.
Sure. I think Cassius started his career as a freshman. He's coming off the bench. It's not like he came out there and started right away. So I don't think by you throwing Cassius's name out there, you're putting like too high of expectations, just because like their first years could be actually fairly similar. So with that, I think we'll call it a night. We're gonna have to work through again. Want to hear from you guys as far as how you want our shows to be structured, kind of our midweek shows. I'm probably going to be over in East Lansing Wednesday night to take in the scrimmage, because full disclosure, I'm ready to shift a lot of my attention, a lot of my efforts towards basketball, just because football is not producing a whole lot of attention right now, rightfully so. I think the fan base is kind of ready to put a pin in this season and be done with it. So I'm ready to turn my attention to basketball. So I think that's why I'll be Wednesday night. With that said, I don't think we'll have a pod Wednesday night. Aiden, is high school football still going on for you?
Yeah, right now? So now we're in state playoffs. So
okay. So what a Thursday's night looks like for you.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so maybe we'll come back Thursday night. I'll have some reaction from the scrimmage, and then at that point we will obviously we'll break down Michigan State, Minnesota a little bit too, and we'll see what what the traffic looks like next week or in the lead up to that game as well. So we're in that part of the season where there is overlap between the two programs. So we'll play it by ear as we go. As always, appreciate you guys joining us on this Monday night. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time on the Spartan Nation Podcast.